Good morning, everyone. It is such a delight to welcome you to this 2024 Hall of Fame lecture at the School of Fashion at Kent State University. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce our Dean of the College of the Arts, Dr. Diane Petrola, who will be moderating the presentation and then the Q&A session afterwards.
Thank you so much. I am pleased to announce that on Saturday night, we will induct Dame Zandra Rhodes as the 2024 inductee of Kent State University's School of Fashion Hall of Fame. Absolutely. Known for her fabulously bold prints, including the one that matches our set so beautifully today, the iconic British designer Dame Zandra Rhodes launched her eponymous fashion brand 56 years ago. Nicknamed the Princess of Punk, Dame Zandra burst onto the fashion scene in the late 1960s and continues to work from her studio in London. She began as a printed textile designer and is renowned for perfecting the art of print as an intrinsic influence on garment shape. With dramatic designs and her own distinctive look, Dame Zandra paved the way for fashion as theater and entertainment. Her illustrious career has seen her dress international stars, including Freddie Mercury, Diana Ross, and Barbra Streisand, as well as British royalty, most notably Princess Diana and Princess Anne. Originally marked as creating designs that were too extreme, in the early 1970s, Rhodes left England to try and break into the American market. Within a few weeks of arriving in New York, she met American fashion columnist and editor Diana Vreeland, who debuted Rhodes' knitted circle collection on Natalie Wood in American Vogue. A pioneer of the British and international fashion scene since the 1960s, her career has seen her produce over 5 decades of fashion collections and more recently focus on strategic collaborations with fashion and lifestyle brands such as IKEA of Sweden, Happy Socks, and Populissimum. In 2003, she founded London's Fashion and Textile Museum, which to this day showcases some of the best in fashion and textile design. More recently, in 2020, she formed the Zandra Rhodes Foundation, a charity that ensures future generations of designers, artists, researchers, students, and educators with the invitation and access to study her life and designs with an emphasis on her methods and techniques. Dating from the mid-1960s to the current day, the foundation is working to catalog her 6,000 garments, printed textiles, drawings, accessories, fashion films, coda traces, silk screens, press cuttings, personal memorabilia, and collected artworks. A central collection will stay with the foundation, and the remaining material will be donated to permanent collections of major museums throughout the world, including the Fashion and Textile Museum, the Victoria and Albert Museum, and the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. We are honored to have Dame Zandra here with us today. The Hall of Fame lecture is a wonderful opportunity for our students in the KSU community to learn and engage with designers and merchandisers who are the leaders in the fashion industry. So thank you for sharing your time, your experiences, and your insights for what it truly means to be a change maker in fashion. So, and now, Dame Zandra.
Oh, well, definitely. I can tell you can hear me here. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I mean, what a wonderful school. I've been having a wonderful experience going round and going to classes and seeing everything here, and it's been an inspiration, so I'm thrilled to be here. Now, let's see if I get all this clicker right. This is a wonderful drawing that I'm just checking that I'm seeing the same thing before I start. It's a wonderful drawing by David Doughton, who draws a lot for English Vogue, and I've got one eye, but I like the drawing. Now, do I go? Hang on, I have to check that it moves each time. Is that? Should it move, or have I pressed the wrong button? Sorry about this. I pressed that. Oh, that one. Thank you. Pressing the wrong thing to begin with. I was born in Chatham, Kent, which is a small town between London and Dover. And it was, in those days, still fairly country-like, probably a bit like here, actually. And so that's a picture of me at the age of 13, doing a drawing in my sketchbook. I was always painting and drawing, and I had a very exotic mother, and that's my mother who taught in the art college that I went to, and that's in the 50s. And she taught dressmaking, and I never even imagined that I'd be making clothes. And in the middle is a picture of me with my sister and my mother in Paris. It would be in the 50s. I was always drawing and sketching, and these are sketches that I did both when I was at school at about sort of 17, and then when I first went to art college. And I always had a sketchbook, and I was always going out drawing. I actually thought I'd be a book illustrator. So, and I sort of, then another, here we are. And these are more of the sketches. The one of the landscape is, at that time, was the landscape that could be seen from the back of my house where we live, because we were on the top of a hill. And then paintings of a beach in Normandy. And then the funny old sewing machine that my mother was always sewing in the evening. She was always making evening dresses. And then if we were good, my sister and I could sit and watch her fitting a wedding dress. As long as we didn't talk, we were allowed to watch. And then so as I say, it was fairly industrial town on the River Medway. And this is one of my sort of watercolour drawings in my sketchbook. I went to first of all, I went to an art college for 3 years, doing all sorts of different subjects, but fell in love with doing printed textiles. I had a very exotic teacher, and at that time, like one does, I think I modelled myself, and I had wore all black and black jet jewellery, and my hair was long and sort of very Victorian look, exactly like the teacher. And then she was a wonderfully exotic teacher called Barbra Brown, who did some wonderful textiles. And she said, if you work hard, I'll get you into the Royal College of Art. And if we didn't do our homework, she wouldn't talk to us the next week. So it was quite strict. And so I applied to go to the Royal College of Art for printed textiles. And I was at the Royal College of Art in the 1960s when David Hockney was a senior. Didn't dare talk to him then. And but it was a very wonderful time at the Royal College of Art, pop art time. And this is the display of the textiles that I printed while I was at Royal College. It was all silk screen printed. So I chose for what was called my major subject, which was called your major task, I chose medals, probably because I saw this wonderful painting by David Hockney with medals painted on the generals. And so I did drawings of medals, as you can see in the middle there. And then the print on the far, I can't tell left and right, I always have to look at my hands. On the left-hand side is the medals, and you actually have a piece of that in your library, and it was sold while I was at the Royal College, and it was printed by Heels Furnishing Textiles. But the rest of the fabrics, I started to fall in love with the idea of doing textiles that weren't going to be wallpapers or curtains. I started to do fabrics that I saw as dresses. So this is a picture of what I looked like when I was at the Royal College. I still had black hair then. And that's the medal fabric in the background, and is a yellow silk dress that I printed that my mother made. And then another pop art inspired design that I also sold to the furnishing fabric company Heels. So I left the Royal College of Art with a first class honours degree, and they said, well, if you're doing dress textiles, we'll take you up to Manchester and you can go and see the people and sell your textiles. So I went with my great big folder and I laid my folder out, and they just laughed at the designs and showed me terrible textures, and they said we sold 1 million yards of this one, and no one bought anything. So I came back to London and discussed it with my tutors, and they said, well, why don't you go straight to the high street? So I went to Carnaby Street, and there were 2 fabulous designers, Sally Tuffin and Marion Fole, and they were doing all the trendy dresses that you would see on the Beatles starlets and things. So I went to see them, and I did dress collections for 3 seasons for them, and this is 2 of them, one with the stars and one with sort of pop art type stars that was on the cover of Queen magazine. And so that was really wonderful, and they agreed that my name would be printed on the textiles and go with all the publicity, so that I wasn't an invisible textile designer. I do have to add that that's the one thing, I'm proud to say I'm a textile designer that makes clothes, and sometimes I feel the textile designers, let's take something like wonderful like Chanel that you always see, and some invisible weaver created that incredible weave that really is 3/4 of the garment that you're looking at. You're not looking at something that is only what a designer has cut up. And I also think they cut up things too much. So anyway, I was with them for 3 years, and then they found my designs were getting a bit too extreme. But problem was that I knew that I tried to sell a few designs, and I think a few I've seen that were printed with Bianchini Ferrier and things, but I wasn't doing enough, and otherwise I was teaching for 2 days a week at the same time. So then, while I was teaching, I met another girl called Sylvia Ayton, and together we formed a company, and I would do the garments, and I would do the prints, and she would do the garments. So this is part of our collection, and we founded a shop in the Fulham Road called the Fulham Road Clothes Shop. That was, in fact, Vanessa Redgrave backed it for us. And this is where I used my lipstick prints. And we also did, paper dresses. So this was a paper dress that we did with the light bulbs. It got a lot of publicity, but fell flat on its face and lasted a year. So then Sylvia got offered a job as top designer for Wallis shops. And I ended up thinking, well, now I've only got teaching. And for me, I'm sorry about this, but I didn't like teaching. I wanted to do textiles. So, and then here, this is what I looked like at the time. And this is my studio. So I always paint things up full scale and look at myself in the mirror and try and work out what would work properly. And in fact, when I was still at college, Pucci, who was a great influence with his wonderful, huge prints that he was doing, they thought I was ideal to go and work for Pucci. So I, in fact, met him in a shop called Woollands, which is next to Harrods. It was next to Harrods, in Knightsbridge, and I laid all my designs out on the floor in the office, and he walked in very grandly and looked at them and then said, I think you should design in black and white, and walked out. So that was my experience. So I didn't have a job. So Sylvia took the job at Wallis, and I was left without a job. And I'd met 2 wonderfully mad American models, Oksana and Miroslava Pristav, and they used to waltz along the King's Road in my chiffon scarves and look amazing. And they kept saying, you've got to come to America, you've got to come to America, you'll make your fortune. I don't know why I believed them, but anyway. So I can just show you first. So everything that you see in my clothes has been hand printed in my studio in London. Originally, I would have been the person printing them, but later it got larger. So that's just a picture of me in the studio, and various pictures of my print room, and all down the wall are the measuring sticks, which some of you saw in an earlier lecture yesterday. So I went to America. Oh, well, before I went, I decided I'd go to America. So I then had to decide. I got in two friends of mine who, one had been a librarian and he got into the Royal College of Art, and he didn't say to me, "You're a textile designer and you can't design dresses." So he showed me how to make patterns. And the thing about my work really is the fact that it's very much textile driven. So the shape of what the print is that I design is often the shape of what the garment is to come. Here are some of the clothes from my very first collection. The kaftan on the far right is just the sleeves are like huge circles, and then where the circles join, that's the center front of the kaftan. And then in the center are the two models, Oksana and Miroslava, in a photograph in British Vogue in 1969. And then a quilted dress that's made totally out of circles, and there's one in the Met and one in the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. And this is what I looked like when I first went to New York, usually with a scarf round my head, and I had high white Biber boots and a quilted satin dress. So I went to New York with a letter of introduction to Deanna Vreeland of American Vogue, and she saw the garments and raved about them, and she photographed them on Natalie Wood. And so that's Natalie Wood in the chiffon kaftan that you just saw, and also the yellow kaftan coat. I noted, by the way, that you don't have any of my chiffons in the museum, and I intend to rectify that. So then, and at this time, I was cutting out all of the garments myself, and I had two girls doing the machining, and then I'd organize the finishing, but often would be the one who would be doing the finishing at this stage. So the picture on the left is by Bill Cunningham, and it's my pointed chiffon, which is, the design is like a chiffon shawl, and then it's cut out around the edges and hand rolled with feathers on the bottom, and then a little dress with the same feathers on the bottom of that. So I went to New York, and Deanna Vreeland photographed them. She made a phone call immediately and introduced me to Henry Bendel, which was the chic boutique in New York at that time. And probably for the next, 15, 20 years, I would be selling each season, I would be selling to them. While I was in New York, I went about doing sightseeing and went to the incredible, at that time, it's not there now, the Museum for the American Indian on 188th Street. And I did lots of drawings of the feathers, and ended up, and it was wonderful seeing how the North American Indians had embroidered these feathers and done all of the beadwork and everything like that. So the designs here were then, I translated that into my feather prints, and these are the feather print kaftans. But what's so funny is when Anna Swee had her exhibition, she had one of them on show, and she'd originally said to me, "Zandra, you've been such an influence, have you got anything you could lend me?" And then when I showed her what I got, she said, "Oh, mine are in a much better condition." She treasured hers much more than mine. So anyway, so just after that, so into the late mid-80s, I was lucky enough to then do a wonderful trip right across America, and I did a cowboy collection, in fact, before Calvin Klein and some of the others, and this is my ultra suede cowboy, and I printed the shapes of the garments and then cut out around the edges of them, and this was part of the cowboy collection. So I'd formed a shop in London at this time, which was selling my chiffon dresses, and we get to the late 70s, and I suddenly thought I'd like to do a very chic punk collection. So this was my punk collection where I'd already, if any of you have seen, I've got 4 of my books in the library, and one of them clearly explains, because I was very influenced by the Salvador Dali drawings of tears, and I did, so I thought I'd do real tears in wonderful French jersey, and they were really rather lovely dresses, and the safety pins, we put beads on them. And my partner, who at that time, I'm going to say she was a lot older than me, but she's younger than I am now. But anyway, she said, well, if we're going to do that in our chic shop in Mayfair, we've got to do it with panache. The whole shop, we mustn't be now chiffon dresses. We'll put this wonderful jersey statement out. So we put the wonderful jersey statement of pink and black out with the beaded holes and safety pins, and no one bought it. So great pictures, very lovely, collector's items now, but they didn't sell. So, and then the wonderful girl in the mask is Little Nell from the Rocky Horror Show, who was my model before she was in the Rocky Horror Show. Then a little bit later, English Vogue rings me up and they say, oh, Princess Diana is going to get married and we'd like ideas for wedding dresses. So I sent in ideas for my gold pannier dresses. One was shown in the Met 2 years ago. As you know, I didn't get the job because she'd have been in this gold otherwise. But it was a wonderful, working with pleating has also been a very lovely experiment with what it would actually do with the body. And seeing some of the things yesterday with the students, of the things that you do on dress stands, I'm sure you could do amazing things with pleating on your dress stands as well. And this was my shop during the 70s in London off of Bond Street. It was a very chic shop. I think probably wonderful Jan here, who I know you're lucky enough to experience, who was my top model in the 80s in London with me. And so this is my shop that was just off of Bond Street where we display the clothes, including the punk ones that were then taken down. These are various garments that were on display in Bendel's and in Bergdorf Goodman and also in Martha's. And so these are just different windows that I photographed during different times that I was in America. These are different looks that I've experienced, some of which I don't know whether I prefer to forget, but I always believe as a designer, you're representing your own work, your own advertisement, so that I only, except now and again when I wear something different, which I did wear an Anna Sui in honor of her at an exhibition. But in the main, I wear my own clothes because that's what I produce, and therefore that's what I believe in. So there are various pictures of me, both in dungaree suits when I was here just after Woodstock, with feathers on the end of my hair. I mean, it's led me to a lot of other things, like my first visit to New York. My great friend Richard Holley, a top decorator in Houston, took me to visit Angelo Donghia, and he said, well, if you look like that, I'd like to see your work. And so I was lucky enough to do prints for Angelo Donghia of both furnishing wallpapers and furnishing fabrics. So then the punk look in the middle. Yes, various looks, which I always enjoy doing. What I must do another time is sort of, I was explaining yesterday, was when you see what it really looked like, where your hair's stapled to a board and you're only right just for that picture, and the rest of you isn't. So it's quite interesting. This is Princess Diana in in one of the dresses I made for her. It was actually the dress where she announced she was pregnant in Tokyo, and it's hand-printed silk chiffon, and all of the edges are hand-rolled and edged with little matching pearls, and all cut out to go round it. And then that's the Duchess of York in a dress and Princess Margaret in a pleated jacket. These are various pictures. Diana Ross in the gold outfit, Freddie Mercury, who I dressed actually before they were in the same, it's quite that famous. I got a call from Brian saying he and Freddie would like to come round, and I have to admit that when I made an appointment, I said, you'll have to come in the evening because I don't have a changing room. It was an open room. And that they came round in the evening. But when I put the phone down, I had to ask my group what they played. So, and then it was actually a wonderful wedding top, and I said, take the top off, and I made him run around the room and see how he'd feel when he was performing, because it was only the three of us in the room. And it's funny that this is the one that always gets remembered, and I'm really quite pleased because although he looked good, I didn't like the T-shirt look quite so much. And then this is Donna Summers on the cover of her record in my classic dress. That's the one I think you should have in the museum. And then I did Barbra Streisand's outfit when she came to sing in London just before the lockdown, which was great fun. This is my apartment in London, which is just full of things, and lots of colour. The floor's rainbow, and all the walls are different colours of the rainbow. And I have a chandelier that's like one of my drawings, but in mirror. I don't know if you can see it that clearly, but maybe you'll get a better picture with the next one. So this is the Rainbow Apartment, and it's on top of the Fashion and Textile Museum that I founded. And the building is by Ricardo Legarreta, who is a top architect of Mexico and known for color. So it was just perfect for me. And that's my little terrace at the top. And then that's just my dining room table. And I collect china that I also like to think of as a work of art. Of course, unfortunately, when the artists come to see me, I hope they don't notice if I've chipped it, but anyway. These are some of the dresses that I did just before COVID lockdown, which were classic takes on a lot of my classic styles. So you'll see the middle one is rather like the one that I did that you saw on the Donna Summers book cover, and they're all printed in my studio in London and hand rolled and edged with pearls, and then the pleated bustier style. Then in 2016, Pier Paolo took over from Alone with Valentino and asked me if I'd do the collection of prints for his very first collection. So he did prints based on my classic lipstick that I hadn't sold in the 60s. And then so he did the lipstick ones that you can see in these pictures. I think, oh yes, no. And then he also did wonderful landscapes where I had to do imaginary trees and things that were wonderful. I don't appear to have a picture of that one. Then these were some of the later styles that I did just before lockdown. And then when lockdown happened, I actually stopped the printing, but have continued to do all sorts of other projects. So here, this is my IKEA project that because of things like Zoom being invented, I had a visit just before lockdown to go to Sweden and discuss that they would do all sorts of different products with me, you know, like carpets, and we discussed all the different things. And then when it came to the production, each country would send one of them to me and one of them to Sweden, and we discuss if the colours had to be changed. And so I did lampshades with my wiggles on, carpet with my wiggle, as you can see there, all sorts of wonderful things. So it was great to have IKEA with my products, but they only go in there like lightning. So, but they did come to America, which was wonderful. And then another Swedish line, Happy Socks, which I've got on today, my wiggly socks and my wiggly feet. So we did, I did 2 series with them, one with my lipsticks that you can see, and then my classic wiggles. So that's been great fun to do. And another thing that involves pattern. I've worked with a company in Vancouver called Fluvog and worked with sneakers and shoes there. But the ones I'm wearing, during lockdown, when one had to use initiative with what you could do, I did lessons on hand painting sneakers on the TV. So, you know, it led me to lots of wonderful adventures, and I hope it did with some of you, where you're locked alone, but you've got to not be alone, and you keep doing your work. And the main thing for all of you is whatever hits you, you have to keep going. And I find for me, my work is one of the things that always keeps me going. It doesn't always sell, but you always have to pretend it does. You know, because that's part of the whole thing. And I believe if you're persistent and you don't give up, that in the end, if your ideas will ring true, something will happen, like coming around the classes and all of you trying different things. And you convince first yourself, then you convince the people around you, and then it spreads further and further. I also did this just after lockdown, which is, I designed the bed head and the bottom for the bed, and then that's my bedroom on the right-hand side. And then there's a picture of me in the promotion, which they also filmed up in my penthouse. And this is the wallpaper that I did also for another Swedish company. And this is the Manhattan one. So they went to my old prints that I'd done, and the Manhattan wallpaper, which is one of my favorites. And you've actually got in your museum, you've got my Manhattan beaded dress, which is a real classic, and the only one I know otherwise is in the Met in New York. So it's rather lovely to see it here when I came round. And everything I do is drawn, first of all, by hand to scale. So this would have been drawn by hand. They're always a 3-color print. So it's three colors, and I design it to scale. This collection I did for the Boohoo group, which is what used to be Wallace, and they wanted my classic dress, which you can see on the right-hand side, with the print that is the shape of the whole bodice. The all over is the skirt, but the bodice. And if you do prints that go with the body, they give it an extra shape. It's not just cut into anyhow. So it makes the statement of the whole garment. This is, I did a range of sunglasses and beach bags with an Australian company called Populissima, and this is the collection for that. This is the museum that I founded. It's in fact an old warehouse, and I bought it when no one was taking any notice of my designs, and my great friend Andrew Logan, who makes my jewellery, including my egg, said, Zandra, you've always wanted to do a museum, and you've saved all those clothes for years. Get a museum together, buy this warehouse. And I said, what do you think I am? Made of money. And then I worked out that I could sell my house and it would buy the building. And then I flew Riccardo Ligaretta over to London, first class on my mileage tickets. And and I said to him, this is an up-and-coming area. There was nothing around there at that time. And now they've built the Shards, so it's really very central and fabulous. And he agreed to do the building. So the building is a wonderful orange statement, and I live just on the top where you can see those little pokey palm trees. So, you know, I got that together. And this was the exhibition just before lockdown, which was 50 Years of Fabulous, which was the exhibition of my clothes with the different clothes representing the different years. And that's, I don't think it's travelled to America yet, but it's been travelling, it's been to Scotland. And then just before I left and came to you, Blenheim Palace, a wonderful grand palace just outside of Oxford in London, gave us a choice of rooms in the palace. And this is the room showing, and I've got my punk dresses at one end and then my chiffon classics in the other, and that's currently on at the for the next 2 months at Blenheim Palace. And here, the light's so bright here, I have to try and remember. Oh, and these are just close-ups. These are close-ups of just some of the looks that you can see where we did the special looks like the pointed fringe that Trevor Sorby had invented for me, and the punk hairstyles and how they looked for the show. And then in August, my book comes out called Iconic. So I hope you will enjoy that. And then this is just my logo with different places where I'm proud to be at. The De Montfort University are storing the whole of my archives, and I'm proud to be here at Kent State, and I work closely with UCA, and you can see the different logos that have been associated with me. And now I'm here for questions.
Well, first, thank you. That was just fascinating. It was so wonderful to learn so much about your career and your work. And I do have some questions. We'll open it up to questions from the floor towards the end. And Murad is in charge of telling me when we're at that point in time. So I guess my first question for you is, when you refer to yourself, do you consider yourself first a print designer, a fashion designer, or a lifestyle designer?
I love the lifestyle bit. I mean, basically, as I said, I'm a textile designer that was lucky enough to end up finding a job that kept me busy and still keeps me busy. So I suppose I'm very proud of being a textile designer and realizing how important pattern is to me and in cheering up one's life, really.
Yeah, that's great. So you talked a lot about your early training as an artist. And mentioned this in passing, but could you maybe elaborate on what it was that made you say, okay, I am a fashion designer and a textile maker, like align yourself to the fashion industry exclusively?
Well, I started doing the prints, and then as I showed you, I hold the paper up in front of me and I look in the mirror, and the biggest question I always ask is, would I wear it? Mm-hmm. If you say, oh, I wouldn't, now it does mean it might be that you might not want to wear it as bright, or you might have to have the pattern a bit smaller, but the question always is, I have to like it first. Mm-hmm. If I don't like it, so I wouldn't take a job just for the money if I didn't feel that I could do an okay job doing it.
Yeah. So along those lines, where do you start? Like, where does the idea come from, and how do you get on that path?
Quite often it will start as a drawing in my sketchbook, or a doodle. I might draw a particular flower I see, or I might sort of notice an ad in a newspaper. You know what I mean? It could come, you never know where the idea's going to come from, but then the thing is, you have to develop it and have to work it out. I don't do anything on a computer. All I can just about do is answer a letter. So I would draw it out on paper, try lots of rough ideas in my sketchbook. Then I would draw it to scale and paint it to scale. Now, nowadays, in all through my career, up until really just before the beginning of COVID, we would have done like a design that you see here, would have been hand painted out in a 3-color separation on full-scale coda traces and then developed. But now it could be done on the computer and then done from there.
Great. So you talked about your career paths, right, as you were training to be a designer. What do you think supported you the most? Like, was it a person, or what was it that supported you the most in finding your place in this industry?
As a student, my mother was always a support, saying, don't give up.
Yeah.
I find also one's friends are a support. I've always said, you know, in life you can more or less, I don't mean you can have everything that you want, and everything has got a price tag equal to what you take. So, for example, if the price tag, it's a bit like Alice in Wonderland. You know, the jars are up there and it says, I want to be a famous designer. So you swallow the peel, but then you cannot get rid of it. Once you've swallowed it, you have to take the price tag that goes with it, whether it means I can't go out tonight because I've got to get the designs done, or I can't do certain things. So the price is equal to what you take.
Okay.
But on the other hand, it is there for all of you to take.
Absolutely.
And I, you know, that's what's so exciting. And I think you're all living in a very exciting time, and you're all creating the future.
So when you talk, so you're talking about the support system of your family, of your friends, but what about specific connections in the industry? Like, how did they help you get started in having your own business and helping it be so successful?
I think you go along in little stages. So when you realize someone supports you, you have to remember to say thank you and to make sure that you credit them. Yeah. I think one should, where you can, always give credit where you can, because it will always come back on you. It doesn't take away. Right. You know, you'll find it will increase for you.
What is a day in your life like?
Sorry?
What is a day in your life like now as a designer and as a business owner?
As a boring workaholic, I usually try and be at my desk by about 8 or 8:30. I don't like going to lunch.
Remember that. No lunch.
Well, it's all right having a quick lunch, but lunch is out. I find there's always a rush to get back again. Yeah. So I prefer to do things that happen in the evening.
Okay. Has that changed over time?
No.
So you've always had that pattern. That's good.
I mean, I have been through glamorous periods when I used to be on a promotion, or if I'm coming out, it is a trip where then you would have lunch. But when I'm in London, I find it very difficult, and I still don't find time. But probably it also keeps you a bit slimmer. Yes. Otherwise, I'd eat whatever got put in front of me.
So you've had such tremendous success, and as you've gone through your career, how do you measure those successes, like now when you look back over time?
Sometimes it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes when I think back about how I walked into that office and Deanna Vreeland made all that difference, whereas I hadn't managed to do it in London. And I suppose in those days, America seemed that much further away as well. Yeah. You know, when I look back and I think, oh, that's like a fairy tale, or wonderful trips. You know, I was remembering with Jan, wonderful trips where we do incredible publicity at Neiman Marcus with Princess Margaret coming in and all those grand things, you know, and thinking about how amazing some of those things were.
Yeah. Just because when you tell the story, it is just really amazing that you walked in there with a letter and ended up with your work on the cover.
I still think, you know, it was something that was sort of meant to be, and you can only half believe it.
Yeah, it's remarkable. So you went back to London, and how did you get your business started?
I went back to London with my order, and I continued to make it, and I'd make that order and deliver it, and then do different things, like wonderful things like Britt Eklund coming in with Peter Sellers for a dress. And it was somehow they were, at that time, they'd be seen on TV with things, and maybe it's still the same, but I'm just in a different generation. But, so it was quite wonderful when these things happened, and you open Vogue and there were pictures of your dress in it and things. It was rather fabulous.
Yeah, really. So did you have a single mentor? I know you mentioned your mother was very supportive. Was there a professional mentor who guided you?
A wonderful mentor who guided me was in fact an incredible woman called Adele Rootstein. And she was the woman that invented the very lifelike mannequins. I believe she did one of Jan too. And they do 3 poses, wouldn't they? And she captured each particular model who did certain things. So it was incredible. She did wonderful one of Pat Cleveland. If any of you have ever met Pat Cleveland, she's like a wonderful exotic parrot. And to work with her, when she was getting ready, she never minded hanging around in the makeup room. She'd be talking to herself in the mirror, and so, a lot of these different models have all different aspects about them. And Adele Rootstein always believed in me and donated some of the models when she died. She was just incredible. And she hated working with, she'd worked originally in aquascutum windows, and she thought there could be better mannequins than this, and she in fact made some of the most memorable mannequins, and I really miss them now.
That's remarkable. So you talk about mentorship, but is there a designer who was influential on you and maybe inspired you as you were pursuing your career?
Well, I think early on, seeing how prints were so much on a Pucci dress, and then realizing that as a print designer, I was creating things that, you were going to wear, and they were part of a garment. And as I always say, I'm not a furnishing, I'm not a painter who went into doing textiles. I'm doing textiles because I think they're an art form, like I was talking about a wonderful Chanel weave, or a gorgeous, or how you think of Issey Miyake works with pleating. I work with printing and see what it can do to a plain fabric and make it exotic.
So as you worked over your career and had so much success for such a long time, how do you think you stay so consistent, and how do you stay motivated?
I think I'm lucky enough to enjoy what I'm doing. So fit in and find the time to do it. And I'm lucky enough, I'm here, I can meet lots of lovely young students, see what you're doing with your work, see, in fact, you think suddenly, gosh, maybe I'm getting old and it's all advancing past me, but at least I'm lucky enough to see it all, be included, and be part of the adventure.
So you did, most recently when you founded your museum and your foundation, what made you think that this was something that would be important and that was worth your investment and that was an important part of your legacy?
I felt particularly that often the world doesn't notice what happens with British designers, particularly now that we're a stupid go-it-alone country that thinks that they don't even have to be part of Europe, but we won't go into that too much. But, you've got such wonderful things that happen. You have great textile designers of the past. So a wonderful one, if you've never seen her work, Audrey Levy, that was designing in the 50s, or Pat Allbeck, and all of them are invisible textile designers. Then you've got wonderful, if you've never seen the work of Bill Gibb, look Bill Gibb up, who did incredible work influenced by his background in the Scottish Highlands. And he worked closely with Kay Fassett, who you've probably seen his wonderful quilts and weaves. And he's still, if we put a Kay Fassett exhibition on in my museum, we have ladies queuing round for the museum to open. It is amazing. Actually, we've got a Bieber show on at the moment, and we also are having queues before we open. So it's not, but do you know what I mean? So it was mainly to try and make sure that British, and particularly British textile designers, got remembered. But we've done wonderful things. We've had a wonderful Anna Sui exhibition that's now been travelling.
Yeah, excellent. So you're in a room full of 20-somethings. What advice would you give these individuals as they pursue their careers in the fashion industry?
Never give up. I always feel you should surround yourself also with friends that encourage you. So if the work's going to take you a lot of time, you don't want someone that's always going to say you've got to come out to a party. So you know, I mean, everything you take is equal to the price. So it probably means you can't always be going out. But nowadays, probably going out can also be something that you're doing on the computer. So who knows?
All right, last question, and then we'll open it up to the floor. Where do you see, what's next? Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I don't know. I hope I'm not pushing up the daisies, but but you know, I hope I'm going to continue to be wanted in my own in an aspect, so that I can continue working. It'd be wonderful.
Absolutely. Well,
thank you for such clever questions.
Oh, well, I'll give Hillary credit for the clever questions, but thank you. I think we'll open it up to the floor. We'll maybe raise your hand, and I think Hillary will bring a microphone around. There's one in the back.
Go, Francis. Come on. You be the first one.
Yes. Hi, I'm Frances Brunner. I'm a senior BFA fashion design major. And first of all, I want to thank you for speaking. I found it quite inspirational to celebrate your journey and just your life as a creative. But my one curiosity would be, as a beginning designer, person, artist, what do you think you used to value that you might no longer value anymore, or kind of, yeah.
What did I value that I no longer value anymore?
Mm-hmm.
That's a very difficult question. What do I value that I didn't value then? What do I value now that I might not have valued then? Mm-hmm. Gosh. I'm going to turn it on you first. Ooh. What do you value?
Yes. I think throughout the last year, I think I used to value a lot more. I guess it was a little bit more egotistical and sort of fame and success, like kind of like, oh, I want to be this huge designer. I want to be, you know, kind of top dog and, you know, kind of climb that ladder. But I think what I value now is more so feeling fulfilled and content in my everyday life, and understanding kind of the balance of it all, and not so much shooting for the image of what it could be, but what's my everyday life really look like and feel like, and am I satisfied with that?
I think that's a wonderfully grown-up answer. I don't know that I was grown up enough to think that, so that I do tend, I suppose I tend to be totally dominated by my work. Mm-hmm. So most of my friends are people that also are always dominated by their work. Mm-hmm. So for example, I'm close friends with an artist called Andrew Logan, who made my egg and my jewelry. And I hope we're not always promoting in a boring way, but we're promoting in the sense that we wear our things and we're always out as a group. So, I mean, I think, you know, all of us are promoting in some ways. Maybe it's just that not promoting it so strongly. But of course, I'm here in bright yellow today, in a bright yellow chair, so it's a very bright promotion of my prints. But it's not always like that, although I don't think you'd ever see me in black. Ooh. So
keep it colorful.
Unless it was printed on.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kendall Crotty. I'm a sophomore fashion design student. And do you find that you're kind of becoming a lot more, I don't know how to word this, that young people are still very gravitated towards your fashion? Because I think you just have such a youthful way of designing. Do you find that like the new generations, when they find you, they still love your fashion and they love your designs because they're just such a youthful way to them?
So what? I didn't quite follow that. Do I find what?
Do you find like younger generations still loving your fashion designs, and kind of being gravitated towards it?
Well, it's nice when I find people collect some of the early things that I did and have treasured them and are looking out for them. You know, it's a great compliment, which is wonderful to think one's still valid in one's own way. The one thing that is great about fashion is there are so many aspects. So all of you have got different aspects that you're going to be able to follow. It doesn't always have to shout you in the face. Although I had to come in a nice bright color. It's a lovely bright room and a wonderful audience, so I have to look my best for that. But I do have some things that aren't quite as loud.
Hi, my name is Mackenzie Morgan, and I graduated a year ago as a fashion merchandising student here. And I want to know two things. I want to know your proudest moment and your toughest moment of your career.
My proudest moment, I suppose, was really being made a dame by the Queen didn't actually give me the medal, but it was a wonderful moment realizing that my country appreciated some of the stuff I'd done. So you get to go to Buckingham Palace, and that's very nice. But what was my other moment?
Your toughest moment.
Toughest
one that
moment.
challenged you.
Toughest moment. Toughest moment. Trying to think hard now. When one's sitting here with an audience and thinking of toughest moment. Trust you to think of something challenging like that. A toughest moment. Toughest moment. Toughest moment is having to think of an answer. I'm here on the stage thinking of a toughest moment. You have to give me a few minutes.
I guess, is there a moment in your career where you really were like, I don't know if I can keep doing this, or there was an adversity that made you be like,
oh, I remember appearing.
Should I keep
I was
going?
supposed to be doing a big promotion in Gibraltar, and it was really difficult getting through customs and everything like that. And everything went wrong, and they hadn't organized it. And you realize you're just packing up and you've got to go again. That was awful. And I think always what you have to do is try and make it not look like a tough moment, and try and hold your poise. You must be used to that, because I understand you're doing very well as an ex-student. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ray Porak, and I'm a freshman fashion design student. And one of my questions was, what really pursued you to exploit this like very eccentric and fun style? Because I know that it's really hard to like have those fun, booming colors. Like, what was a moment that really like influenced you, or someone that influenced you?
I suppose really I'm starting off in the pop era. I started to do things and do pop designs, and in those days didn't think about whether they were going to sell or not, but more that was the feeling with Warhol and the paint cans and all that stuff. And then tried to sell it, and it didn't sell. So then I'd be teaching 2 days a week, and I'd still continue to do designs that I felt would be right and convinced that I would wear them. And so I suppose really it was a case then, I put the prints together, and I had to put my, not quite, I suppose you'd say put your money where your mouth is, do the designs and then stand by them. And then it was either, I was lucky enough that I came to America and Deanna Vreeland liked what she saw, but otherwise I don't know. I don't know what I would have been doing, but I was lucky enough that it followed along and then it's gone from there. And I think as a designer, you also have to remember that all the time you're representing yourself. So for example, in London, even if I'm putting the dustbins out, I have to make sure that I look slightly all right because there's bound to be someone across the road with a camera. And, and you have to look all right. You have to look right for the part, whatever you're doing.
All right, Dame Zandra, we're going to take one last question because I was tasked with what I now realize is a difficult undertaking of taking you to lunch, and you don't like lunch. So we'll do one last question here, and then we'll drive. And I'm going to tell you, it's more about the company than the lunch, so that'll make it better, I hope.
Hello, my name is Leah Tompkins. I'm a first-year fashion design major. I love your style, and it's very eclectic, very maximalist. And as someone that also really likes maximalist fashion, I was curious too, is there ever a time where you have too many ideas and you feel like you need to hone it down a little bit? Or do you just throw everything at the wall, let it stick, every idea on the board?
No, I don't find I ever have too many ideas. Often I think I sometimes get scared I won't have another idea, and I can't then turn out the same thing and people go, oh God, I've seen that before. So it's always, I think being a designer is a bit like being a tightrope walker. And so you've got to be prepared to feel a bit dodgy on that tightrope. Because it has to look enough like me, but not like the one before. So you can't say, oh, I did that for that company. It's got to be a different version, but be a Zandra Rhodes, whatever happens. So you're still a tightrope walker, whether you want to be or not.
All right. Thank you so much, Dame Zandra. This is such an honor. Please give us a round of applause. And thank you all for joining us today for this Hall of Fame lecture. Dame Zandra is going to stay with us for the next 2 days, so please take advantage. And
it's been an honor to be here at such a wonderful, enthusiastic school. Thank you.
Thank you.